We all set, Donna?
Yep, all set.
Okay. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Douglas School Committee meeting on Thursday, June 4th, 2020. I'm going to call the meeting to order at 7:04. We are being live streamed on YouTube, and this is the Zoom meeting. And we are going to skip the Pledge of Allegiance, and we do not have a student representative. And we do invite anyone for public comment and communication, if there is any. Seeing none. Anybody have any old business? New business? Seeing none, we'll move on to the superintendent's report.
Thank you very much. The committee had asked that we put back on for consideration a discussion on preschool tuition fees. I think Cindy has received a few emails, and I think maybe some of the members of the school committee may have received a few emails relative to the decision that the committee made. I believe it was the last meeting, the last scheduled school committee meeting, full school committee meeting, that we were going to charge reduced fees for the months of, correct me if I'm wrong here, April and May, March, April, and May.
No, April, May, and June.
May and June.
April, May, and June.
April, May, and June.
Mm-hmm. Right. Okay. And so there had been some concerns that had been raised, and so the committee and Ms. Socia and Ms. Keegan and I decided we should put it back on the agenda for discussion. So I open it up for discussion.
Does anybody want to start?
Well, I guess if you don't mind, I guess I'll chime in. Mrs. Socia did provide to you a document delineating the remote learning overview, which certainly she can speak to that if she would like. I did some more calculations, and as you're aware, the vote was for April, it was 50%, May 50%, and June 15% of the original tuition payments. So if we did not, based on the information that I have here, if we did not collect anything for those months, it would be around $48,000 of lost tuition. I just want to remind everyone that preschool is funded by mostly by the revolving fund, which is the tuition fees, and a little bit by the general fund, and then a very small grant, just under $10,000 as well. My concern is the issue of sustainability. Certainly whatever the school committee decides, and I know, again, I know we've said this a million times, this is unprecedented, uncharted waters. We're all just trying to do the best we can and make the best decisions that we can with the information that we have. And certainly whatever the school committee decides, we'll be very, very happy to do. And I'm going to say, we know it's not, it's a very difficult decision to make. I just know that, either way we may get through, we'll get through FY20, but we're, depending on what we do this evening, we'll have to take possibly a really good look at the preschool program, because we don't know what may happen in the fall. And particularly if we keep having a huge drop in revenues, it may affect being able to have the program at all. So I just want to really put that out there. It is a fact that we do fund teachers out of the tuition fees. In fact, that's the largest part of the expenditures that do come out of the revolving fund. And they were teaching, but I certainly do understand, as well, some of the parents, feelings about it as well. Like I said, I don't feel for a minute that it is an easy decision, but maybe Mrs. Socia could talk a little bit more about the preschool learning overview with regard to the services that were rendered by the teaching and other staff as well.
Sure. when the teachers knew that we weren't coming back, I mean, the preschool teachers were the first ones on board with putting together Google Classroom. They were the first ones. They reached out to Donna Souza. How do we get this going? So when they did get it going, it wasn't, okay, this child only attends 2 mornings, and this one attends 3 mornings, and this one attends 5. What they put together was for everyone, whether they were there 2 days or 5 days, full day or AM. So some parents were actually saying there was more than what they would have been getting had they attended. In everything that they did, they were keeping the parents, thoughtful and in mind, saying, we don't want to overwhelm them. We don't want to burden them, because we were hearing they have older children. They're trying to get the older children on those Zoom meetings and Zoom classrooms, so they didn't have time really for the preschooler. So everything that they were provided with, they were things that they were flexible, that they could look at on the weekend. They could look at it at night, and they put together lessons. They put together demonstrations, read-alouds, demonstrating games or activities they could do with their letter of the week. So they were following the preschool curriculum as if they were in the building.
I wanted to thank you, Cindy, because what you sent us as far as explaining what the teachers put together and what they were doing, as well as what they chose not to do in the interests of overwhelmed parents everywhere. I don't have preschool, but I have still overwhelmed parent. It was very comprehensive. And after getting the letters, the emails saying, from parents, it was really nice to see, okay, this is what was out there. And it is a hard decision, because we all know that circumstances have changed tremendously, and what people were planning 6 months ago is not happening now. At the same time, this is preschool, not daycare. And there obviously is still a curriculum being presented.
Absolutely.
So I just appreciated having it spelled out the way you did. One question I do have is, is there a way to know when kids are accessing, when kids and parents are accessing, so that there is some way of knowing? Because I know when you were here before, you talked about 99% of the kids were accessing it.
Yes.
Yes. So is there something kept, some sort of log or something, so you know who is and who's not?
I'm not sure if there's a log, but when we started doing this, they could tell in Google Classroom, they could go in and see who signed in and who was actually accessing. Then they started to ask, oh, send me a picture of your drawing and things like that. So they knew there was participation there. I mean, I think everyone can agree that it's dropped off in every grade the last, maybe week or 2 weeks, just because that's the nature. But at that point in time, we had no complaints from parents. Everyone was happy. They said that the resources we were giving them were great. And we kept saying, you don't have to do them all. They're there as a resource for you. But at that point in time, we were all participating except for one.
Okay, thank you.
And the other thing that, with some of what they did, it's because of the age. They can't sit with a 3-year-old in front of a Zoom and expect them to be attentive and doing a lesson. I mean, they might pay attention for like 2 minutes and say, I'm bored, I'm out of here, So it's hard, and it's hard to put that on the parent, and that's why we didn't choose to do that.
And my last question, I believe you had said that someone had contacted you and you'd provided a Chromebook or an iPad. Is that correct?
iPad.
An iPad. Is that the only person that has contacted saying that they needed a way to connect?
In preschool.
In preschool.
There was one.
Okay. Thank you. You answered all my questions.
All right. You're welcome.
I'm wondering if Cindy and Courtney could tell us a little bit more about how other area schools are handling it, specifically public schools.
Well, as far as I knew, and I had reported it when I talked to my curriculum group from the Blackstone Valley, the majority were saying they were not going to charge at all. I think Mr. Maines did a quick survey with the superintendents today, and I think Mendon Upton has been one that they were kind of holding back, and now they did charge something, but Milford didn't, Uxbridge didn't, Hopedale didn't. I mean, there's no one else that charged, and they knew they were going to take a financial hit, and they said that, but they didn't feel that it was appropriate for them to do it. And that was all they said to me.
So Becky, if I could chime in a little bit, the genesis of this was that back when we first started this school closure and the remote learning piece of it, that discussion had been surfacing, and the feedback that we had from most of the superintendents was that they were going to look at a modified fee structure. And as it turns out, as time wore on, when I asked the question just today, I was pretty surprised to see that there was a change, clearly a change, universally almost, a change in where they were in the beginning of the COVID as to where they are now. So those who were thinking that they were going to do a modified version of the fee structure had stepped away from that process and had decided not to charge anything for the fee structure. So a few in the very beginning thought that they were not going to, because they felt that they had good balances in their accounts, so that they could make it through the year. But then others were planning on charging a modified structure, and in the time since those conversations, that clearly has changed.
Are we the only town in the area that's charging even a changed fee that you know of?
At this point,
Mendon
I
Upton.
think yes. Mendon Upton was, no, and he changed his mind also just recently as well. So that changed also. And there were a couple that were charging for the March piece of it, and then they weren't charging for the April and May and June piece. Yeah. So that it did change, but at this point, it looks like we would be one of the few in Central Mass, well, one of the few in the Blackstone Valley that is actually charging.
So it would be interesting to find out as well how many of them and to what extent they were providing services to the preschool. You know, in other words, there are a number of different factors that we would need to know about as well, number one. And number two, for lack of a better way of putting it, this whole entire coronavirus world, there's been so many ebbs and flows and so many things people have had to deal with. To be honest with you, some people running out of time as well. So there's been just so many decisions that had to be made in such a short period of time as well. So
I only had time to quickly look at what Uxbridge was offering, and it's I don't want to say it wasn't helpful, but it's clearly not as
robust.
much as we offered. So I can see why they refunded.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I think some,
but maybe didn't charge for those months. Yeah.
Right. And I think some towns just sent out like a blanket list of resources. Here's websites and here you go. Do it when you can, and that was it. But our teachers are doing daily, every morning, they're posting, they're replying to, any comments that the parents are making there. If a parent said, well, I don't have this, or I'm having trouble with that, they'll give them an alternate activity. So they were really in connection with everyone every day.
And I have a feeling you may find, although I don't have that data at this time, unfortunately, that may be the case more often than not. Just from talking to various parents in towns around, just, in the grocery store, or, although I hardly saw anybody, or, what I mean, passing 6 feet away at least, but you know what I mean. I heard different things about different towns, and that's what made me realize, wow, Douglas is doing really, really good, so not just with preschool, but all the grades. But again, it is getting late, and based on what Kevin said, and I know it's a difficult decision, we can get by for this year. But my concern is, because there is a cost to the preschool program, and preschool is extremely important for the academic career of all students. And we also expanded the program based on what parents wanted for their children. So we really want to and need to maintain the program, but in order to do that, it has to be sustainable financially. Because anything that we do not get in tuition fees, and I'm talking more about going forward for FY21 in particular, and what that's going to do to affect FY22 as well. Anything that we don't get in tuition fees, that means we're going to try, which we will not be able to do, shove it over into the general fund. We will not have general funding to be able to do that. So I would imagine that there could very well be reductions in the preschool program. And that would be sad because, you know, we just expanded it based on what parents wanted. You know, the expansion of the program days, and Mrs. Socia did an enormous amount of work with regard to that. Kevin and myself, Cindy, working together to try to accommodate that and provide that for parents. But again, I know it's a difficult situation. It is really getting late in the year. So whatever you decide, I think the three of us are absolutely fine with. And I think that going forward, if we decide not to do it, that we need to maybe come up with something over the summer to make it very clear, or maybe change the way we do things with regard to the tuition fees for FY21.
Lost you, Courtney.
Am I there?
I
Hello?
I can hear you.
Can you hear me?
I think
I
it's
can't.
Sorry.
Yeah, Lisa, you're the only one.
Oh, okay.
I lost you.
Okay.
Just me.
Well, I would be curious to know, and I don't know that anybody knows, but the interest that parents have for next year for preschool. If it's open, would they
Got it.
want to send their kids anyway? Would they rather keep them home? But I agree that if the preschool is going to happen next year, that it has to be spelled out very clearly that if you're signing up for preschool, you understand that distance learning may come back if we don't start that way.
So
Yeah.
I was going to speak to that as well, because here's the reality is, I think that most everyone is prognosticating that there's going to be remote learning next year. And so I think that you need to, whatever the decision is for this year, fine, but whatever you're thinking about for next year, I think there's three options. One is to go the same format, which means a loss in revenue for sure. The second is to have a plan in place that clearly has a statement of what the expectations would be with regards to the services, but also the payments, should we go into remote learning again. Or worst case scenario 3, knowing that we're going to have real strong likelihood, Kelly, based on your point, will we have reduced enrollments? And we're pretty confident that remote learning is going to be part and parcel of what happens next year. Do we not even do pre-K because it's going to be almost unmanageable? So those are your three options. I think that we got a great program. Cindy and her staff have done a fantastic job. And I know that the parents are very, very happy with it. That being said, I think going forward, I mean, we couldn't have foresaw a pandemic and its impacts when we started the year this year, but we can next year. We have a pretty strong sense that there will be remote learning, probably across the board for all grade levels next year of some sort.
So Kevin, just to sort of follow up on that, so I've mentioned several times my daughter does 2-day, full-day preschool. I have been, you know, COVID makes me less decisive than I've ever been, which is not saying much, but I would say, like, I clearly see the work that the teachers have put into this, especially when I look at what Uxbridge is offering, what other towns, you know, I've seen comments about what's been offered, just a list. That's not what's going on here. And I'd even argue that my daughter doing 2 days a week is getting more material available to her because they're providing material every day for, it's basically like the equivalent of a 5-day a week full-time student is what's being put out there in terms of curriculum. I also understand Cindy's perspective on Zoom. I've had my 5-year-old try to do Zoom with some of her friends. It's nonsense. They just stare at each other. They like to stare at each other, but they compare each other. So a picture or a video of a teacher goes just about as far as a live conversation in my personal experience. But I do know that some parents are not happy that that feature wasn't offered, and they really do have their kids attend preschool for, not for the academic piece, but for the social piece and for the nurturing piece, and that's what their kids need. You know, I have difficulty with it because I think that just having a chance to be on the school committee as a parent allows me to see that this money that comes in from pre-K tuition is not just about like you're paying like hourly for what happens, but it's part of the larger pool of what enables us to expand the pre-K program. How do we have 5 kindergarten teachers instead of 4? There's a bigger picture. Are we able to sustain the pre-K program in the fall? And Courtney, if I say something totally false, feel free to correct me. But my concern is, having spoken with more of the parents that I know, that they're almost across the board pretty unhappy about this. And it's hard for me to respond to them when we're the only town doing it, even though we have this quality of content being given. And my worry is that if this is what we're going to do, that come the fall, or when it's time to sign up for pre-K in the fall for those kids who aren't going on to kindergarten, the word in town is going to be, don't bother. You want your kids, you know, you're going to end up remote learning anyway. Don't bother. You can look up people. And I'm worried that people will purposefully, like intentionally make the choice not to enroll because they're not happy that they paid out this money and they didn't, what they were, in their minds, what they were paying for. So I think it's a difficult situation, and I agree. And I think part of the problem is that we're talking about March, April, May. Now we're in June, and I don't really think that's anybody's fault. Like this disaster that we're living in. We're living in a global pandemic. Like we're all flying by the seat of our pants. But to be, and I brought this up at the last time we talked about this, to be asking people for this money retroactively, it's tough because that's not how some people budget and some people live. So I'm having a difficult time with it for this amount of time, even though I have a strong value for what is lost if we don't continue with those charges. And I agree with if we're going to go, in the future, I think no matter what, for this upcoming school year, we need to get a really firm plan about what we're going to do. It's not just a couple of people in my contact, they're not happy. They're happy with the teachers. They like the teachers. They appreciate the content, but they don't think that this was a good decision. So that's my.
Becky, you raised some really good points, and I like what you said about the social and all that. And I have to say, and I have to echo, even from like the standpoint of being in a full-time school situation for my kids who aren't in preschool. I mean, there's so much that they're not getting. I mean, I'm homeschooling my kids, and I'm not even home. I'm at work, and I'm still paying the teacher's salary. And my kids aren't doing anything. I mean, honestly, they're doing a few things, but nothing like what they'd be doing in school. So, I mean, the only thing I don't understand is why we're doing it retroactively and why we weren't billing all along. I don't know how that all works. I guess that's kind of more of a concern. But I feel like if somebody thought that this was for free, like they knew that they were paying for their kids to go to school. And if they had issues, I'm wondering why they didn't say something like, by the way, I can't afford going forward. Why didn't they say something before? Nobody wants to be learning like this. Not me. I mean, these are my tax dollars, and I'm paying teachers, and I don't feel like my kids are getting the social benefits and all that and learning things like they would in school. So I see it both sides. I get it. We don't feel like we're getting our money's worth, but at the same time, I feel like the teachers are working, just not the way that they want to, not the way that we want them to, but what can we do?
I would just throw in there that I think part of the reason that we didn't hear more people complaining is that we just hadn't come to a decision until now. So, there wasn't clarity on whether people would be charged or not. And I think that when many people stopped being charged, that just felt like, okay, we're not going to be charged. No, there wasn't like a formalized decision on the agenda. So I think that's why people didn't complain.
And again, we all have to remember that when this happened, we were so hopeful it was going to be a few weeks, and then a few weeks more, and then another one.
Right.
And it's been an evolving, I guess is the right word. It's been an evolving thing. And hence the lateness of many decisions in all school districts everywhere. But again, I really respect everything that all of you have said and totally understand your viewpoint. You brought up a number of good points. And again, I want to reiterate that we know how difficult this is. Whatever decision you make is perfectly fine. And then, when we move forward, we'll be looking at things a little differently because now we know our world is different. We never would have thought before March that we could ever be facing anything like this. So, and we understand from the parents' point of view that, they were very busy dealing with this on a daily basis, and it just kept evolving as well on their end. So they may very well have not been expecting to receive an invoice. But again, I do apologize for the lateness of it. But to be honest with you, there's so many things going on that there was only so much you could be handling at one time, and it was evolving. So, but I appreciate all of your comments.
And if I could just jump in, I did registration already, and we had done it before we went out in March. I haven't heard anyone saying that, oh, I'm not going to come in the fall or anything, but it's early. But we are full up, and the majority want full day. The 5 full day classes up to 13 in the class, and we had to make our second teacher, who normally does AM and a PM, she's now doing full day, Monday, Wednesday, Friday full day, and Tuesday, Thursday full day with a few just AMs in there. And then we have our 3-year-olds pretty booked up. We have to leave openings for the 3-year-olds for early intervention with the 0.5 preschool teacher. So, pending any changes, right, and things do happen during the summer, but we're full up committed for next year.
So can I share some, thanks Cindy for that, because that's what I was going to ask. Maybe we need to do a survey to find out if we are in a in a COVID world, and it's going to be Zoom online until we get to where we can bring everybody back. Are the parents willing to pay the full tuition? Because again, like Courtney says, we know what the budget is going to kind of look like next year, and it's not sustainable and it impacts, it's a ripple effect. And these are the building blocks. The kids need to have the socialization. They need these basic skills that they learn in preschool. So when they get to kindergarten, so I see the value. But if parents are not going to be willing to pay for the services that are being provided, I think it's one of those areas where we really need to take a long, hard look and do maybe a pregnant pause until we can bring everybody back in. And are the parents understanding this so we don't have this billing issue? I think that's really what we need to go and ask all the parents that have signed up, that they understand it's going to be a Zoom environment, paying whatever their portion of the bill. There will be no proration because it's not sustainable. If we wipe this off, I mean, it's what, $48,000 that we're taking a hit for this fiscal year. It's not sustainable.
June. Yep.
Yeah. So I mean, we can't right the wrongs of what's happened in the past. All we can do is look forward, and I think that's really where we need to be looking at. That's just my 2 cents.
I totally agree with the survey because I think we have to know.
Especially if we're full.
Yes.
Yeah, well, and we know the value of the preschool and how amazing the program is. But if you say, look, some of this is at least partially going to be distance learning, if people aren't willing to pay for it, they have to know that we very well may not be able to offer it at all.
Right.
I can't even say I'm okay with not billing for this year because personally I feel like there was a lot of work done, there was a lot provided, and there should be some, I don't know, but I don't know that it's worth the ill will and the nickel and diming if we say, okay, well, what if we cut it again? What if we do 25%? I don't know if it's worth the feelings in town for that, quite frankly. But personally, I do feel, only one of my kids went through preschool here because of when we moved here. But, you know, in a way, to me, if I've signed my kid up for a program, I expect to pay for the program. And when something happens that is outside the realm of anybody's blame, you know, I understand that there are issues, but at the same time, I have a hard time saying, okay, it's absolutely zero. You know, we're going to provide all this content and sign in when you want, don't sign in when you want, you know, but it's there for you. I am okay with doing that because of the way things worked out, if that's what we decide. But I definitely agree with Heather that a survey for next year to get in black and white what people are willing to pay for.
Well, but then it goes back to the same point that I'm making. Like, I feel like I'm not getting the value for my money for like the older kids too, but like that's a different situation where I'm not actually being charged for that. Like, it's part of the taxpayers' money. So I think that I get what you're saying, but I mean, again, these people, they signed up for this, they signed up for preschool. They knew that they had to pay for it. And yes, we're in a difficult situation and it's horrible. And I think that if somebody really truly has an issue financially, that we should consider their situation. But for everybody else, you know, maybe we do take off June or something like that. But I mean, the teachers were working, they're doing stuff, and it's a program that they signed up for, that they knew they had to pay for. That's just my feeling. I mean, I think that we should stand by our decision and take individual cases as they come and deal with people that have financial issues. I don't know if we can do that, but that's how I would approach it.
I think that would be opening up a can of worms, and we'd probably get 98% of people coming to say that they have an issue.
Yeah, you'd have to have actually a policy and establish absolute protocols, you know, in application, because everybody has to be treated fairly and equally according to a process, and we really don't have time for that. You know, I mentioned at the last meeting, that's something we can look at going forward, but we really don't have the time to do that right now.
We could make
our timeline, Courtney.
I'm sorry?
What is our timeline? Can you tell us about that?
Well, I mean, the books close out. I mean, last warrants and everything are done on July 15th. I mean, we're closing out the books as of June 30th. So we just don't have time.
We can maybe look at a policy based on if we were going to do this in the fall.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. I mean, we currently do have a policy on the books for fee, but it's based on free and reduced lunch. And that's it.
Anyone else?
So just a bit of information is that June 15th at the Department of Education will be issuing guidelines for what school will look like going into September or August. The expectation is that all school districts will be following 85 to 90% of their prescribed plan. Nobody knows what it's going to say. If I were a betting man, I'm not. If I was a betting man, I would say that it's conceivable that it might be 1 week on in the classroom and 1 week remote next year for virtually all students from pre-K all the way through 12, just because of distancing and safety measures with regards to the COVID virus. So we'll get some guidance on the 15th. That will help us to plan what should be going out to parents for the upcoming school year. I would wait for that information to come out before putting together something and releasing something to parents, so that you have that tool to reference. It is coming directly from the DESE, and the expectation, as I said, is that we'll be following it virtually to a letter. So,
Mr. Maines, I've been thinking about this. I've heard rumors of war about this week on, week off. And again, before it was only rumors, and then the fact that the DESE is starting to say that this is something that is more plausible, is to tell the parents of children that you can't work every other week. You can't. Somebody in a household's got to be there. When this hits the street, I believe there's going to be significant blowback. I know it's an idea, but I'll be the first on record live on YouTube at the school committee meeting to say it's a real bad idea. And Jeff Rowley is a great guy, and he's he's surrounded by people. But what it's saying is it's completely dependent. And Mrs. Mulder talked about the parents being significant partners in online learning and in homeschooling. The younger your child, the more dependent you will be on childcare. And to say that to mandate week on, week off is for parents to tell employers, I can't go back to work, and you just cut income by 50%, and then you got cut tax revenue by 50%. And then we're going to be talking about for the next 2 years fiscal shortfalls that are devastated because of so again, I know it's an idea. I think when they roll this out in the next 2 weeks, there will be huge pushback, and it is being a bad idea. That's just my 2 cents. So I'm not putting a lot of faith in that, as we are trying to put together what we're going to look like in our second version of remote learning, because I do believe there will be a requirement for some type of remote learning. But this week on, week off is to immediately predestine people into not being able to get back to their work commitments. So I want to put that out there publicly as that we can't put all our eggs in that basket.
So I hear what you're saying. Please understand that they are going to be issuing it to us. We don't really have input into it. The other piece of it is that if the health community is saying to us that you need to continue to maintain social distancing, and the only way that you can effectively do that is to reduce your class sizes, reduce the number of students on a bus, and the only way that you can effectively do that is to parse them out into groups and reduce it by 50%. So the other option is to not have school next year. I don't know that that's going to be something that they're going to want to do. So there are a lot of options.
I do agree with you. I'm saying I'm just not. The DSE can say it, but then the constituents and taxpayers of the Commonwealth will say you got to come up with a better idea. I understand why, but it's just because they come out with it doesn't mean it's going to be set in stone. That's my 2 cents.
Well, but I just want, so to that point, just to be clear with everybody, and I didn't mean to open up a can of worms, but the statement is from the Department of Education and from the governor's office, basically, that what they prescribe is what we will adhere to. We don't have the ability to modify their plan short of just a few tweaks here and there that make it work better for your district. But the nuts and bolts of it.
Is that Kevin or me?
Hey, Kevin.
Okay.
I guess we have to go to our governors now.
He froze. What I think he's saying is, you know what, Brian, you're 100% right.
Yeah. Okay. Let's circle back. Let's circle back to preschool and make this decision.
Yeah.
Anybody else on preschool?
I mean, you can always ask. You can always ask for if you're going to change your strategy here, which I understand, and I'm not saying that it's right or wrong. I hear everybody's points, and there's valid points. I guess the only thing you could ask is that if you decide not to charge that, if people are looking to pay, I don't think we should turn away people who want to pay their bill.
But we talked about that the last time, because I am with personally, I'm with Kelly. I signed up for this program. Things stink right now, but everybody's doing the best that they can. We are fortunate that we can pay the bill, so we will pay the whole bill. That's fine. But when I brought this up last time, it was as though we have to, because there's not a policy in place for hardship, we can't give waivers out based on that. And then we can't give people the choice, yes or no, because otherwise it has to be a donation, and then a donation has to be something entirely separate.
But but it's still, that would still be for the preschool program. It is something separate from municipal finance laws, but it still absolutely would go for the preschool program.
So, I mean,
in other words, they would be making their payment, and it would be for the preschool program in lieu of paying tuitions, but for the preschool program. That's all it has to say.
But can we make it optional or no?
Oh, absolutely. Donations are always optional.
No. Can we make the remainder of the tuition that we're charging optional or not?
Oh,
That's a little bit different.
I don't think
I think
so.
that they
I
can,
don't think, because you don't have a policy.
Right.
You know, particularly, you know, maybe some regions might do things like, you know, might come up with something like that, but not, no, but they could definitely make a donation, and absolutely, if they want to send in a check with a letter, you know, just stating that this is, you know, in lieu of paying the tuition for the remainder of the FY 2020 year, I'm donating the tuition amount or any amount. It could be any amount.
right.
To the preschool program. And absolutely, it goes 100% to the preschool program.
Can we, but we can't put that in the same piece of information, right? Like if we're gonna, you brought this, you said this last time, Courtney, if we have, if I am understanding or remembering correctly, we have something that's regarding the decision for the remainder of the billing, then we can't put on there, like if we were to decide tonight, we're not gonna remainder, and we send out that letter, we can't put on there, if you would like to make a donation to the preschool, you can do that this way, correct? We can't put them together that way.
I don't see any reason why you can't put that on that letter. We are saying two different things. We are saying that, you know, if you so decide, that, you know, it won't be charging the tuition fee for the remainder of the year. But I don't see anything inherently wrong with putting also in that letter, you know, at the bottom, right under that, saying if you would like to make a donation to the preschool program, you know, it's just a check has to be made out, you know, it'd be the same way with just a letter designating that it's to be spent on the preschool program.
Right.
Because donations always have to designate what they must be spent on, otherwise they can't really be spent. So that's the only thing. I don't see anything inherently wrong with doing that.
I mean, personally, I'm inclined to, sorry, go ahead, Kevin.
My thought was that anything that we can offset is going to help us. I mean,
Yeah, I understand that time is of the essence. I just feel like, I don't know. I think it's a tough topic. I like Heather's idea of the survey. I also feel like, you know, if we were to have this sort of option, whether it's either a survey of, are you going to enroll your kids and be willing to, are you going to continue to enroll your kids in the fall, knowing that remote learning that looks like what we've been doing? I don't know how they could do better. The only thing differently would be to add in the Zooms, but some parents want that, some parents don't. I think from seeing it, I haven't seen it with a teacher with my child, but my 5-year-old hops into the third graders Zooms and she just jumps. Like that's not, you know, so I don't know. I think that's the only thing that could be done really differently in terms of the quality of the material and the quantity of the material. I don't think that can be improved. I'm sorry, I'm rambling. I know a lot of people involved in this situation. I think it's tough, again, especially because the other area schools are not charging. So, you know, I think a survey makes sense. I also personally feel like it would make sense if they decided not to charge, however, be very clear what the consequences of not charging can be. And I would, you know, we've had 2 of the 3 preschool teachers and they are fantastic. Mrs. Hendricks recently won an award for her teaching performance in the area. I don't remember what it was called. They're fantastic. And the price is incredibly reasonable compared to schools around. So I think that's sort of the area that I'm leaning is saying, okay, to keep the goodwill, and because this is crazy and because people are having a hard time and the overwhelming response seems like negative to what our decision was in my exposure, to say, okay, we're not charging, but please consider making a donation because the preschool program will suffer from this decision. You know, and that's kind of where I'm at.
And just in tagging along with that, in some of the discussions that I've heard and seen, I don't think everybody realizes that the preschool is self-funding basically. And I think that's an important part. If we go with this, which, as I said, I can see this as a viable alternative to say, you know, the preschool is primarily funded by tuitions. Mm-hmm. Please consider, you know, if you're able to make a donation to, you know, keep the program going. I just think that needs to be spelled out so that everybody understands that preschool money is not coming from the general fund.
Well,
You
some,
know,
we
some
put-
is, but the bulk of it is coming from the tuitions, and we need that. So,
Would anybody like to make a motion?
What are we motioning for?
To figure out what we're going to do with this tuition?
So we already made a decision. So I mean, basically, we'd have to change our decision.
yes, if you know, if you kind of want to give an idea of what direction you're going in, and then maybe I can propose a vote language for you.
I think it would be to remove not charge for the tuition, but have it accompanied with a really nice letter describing how preschool is being paid for or not being paid for, and giving them an option for a donation.
I would, the only thing I would say is, if we are not charging for the rest of the year, I think charging for March, I know Cindy had said most people had paid March already anyway, but I know we only went halfway through March, but if we are not charging for the rest of the year, rather than trying to give refunds and that sort of thing, I would say, you know, okay, we're not going to charge for April, May, or June, but I would leave March on there. It's just my opinion.
So would you say
So
something
can we
to the
just wait
effect of,
June?
I'm sorry. I know I've talked a lot. I don't have a clear, good idea of the best way to go. Heather, I feel like you're productive with thoughts with your survey. Do you have any feelings on this?
Again, because I am new, people knew that they had a service. And so and it's a phenomenal program, but my child was going to the actual classroom every day. I have no doubts that what's being put into the Zoom classes, because I know the teachers, people knew that they were getting a service. I think we didn't bill full price, we reduced it, but I don't have a child in the preschool where I'm able to hear what the parents are saying and their frustration level. Yes, we were late to the party with sending out notification that we are going to now bill. Now we're going to take a step back. I think we just need to be very explicit going forward that the program could be in jeopardy for FY21 due to the fact that by us taking the hit this year, by waiving everything, whatever we're going to decide to do, which sounds kind of sort of that's the way we're going, that the parents all understand the impact of us taking this 48,000. It's not sustainable in FY21. Because parents probably, if it's going to be remote learning, which we probably are heading to remote learning, are not going to utilize, and then they're going to withdraw. But then we have all of these teachers in the pre-K program, and there's not enough kids. So definitely need a survey, definitely need to be very explicit. It's a tough call. Regardless of what we do, there's no easy win on this either side. Because bottom line, our kids are all going to be impacted by the choice we make.
So what did we reduce it by? Did we reduce it by 50%? I don't even remember what we reduced it by.
Yes, it was 50% for April, 50% for May, and then, well, we were charging 50% of it for April, 50% for May, and 15% for June.
I mean, I still think that's kind of reasonable because we're not charging full price.
Correct.
So, I mean, if we were charging full price, that'd be a whole nother story. Like, I'd be absolutely against that.
but the reason we got to this point truly was that there was a groundswell of
A few
concern,
people. Yeah.
and that had some anxiety over the fact that we were even charging at all, and that's how we got back to this conversation. I'll throw this out there if you as an option. Motion for the school committee to rescind the vote of, I think it was May 14th. I'm sorry, May 7th. I don't think it was the 21st. I think it was May 7th that we voted.
No, wasn't it the
21st?
It wasn't the 28th? Okay, wait a minute now. We got the meeting minutes for the 28th.
Yeah, no, it's the 21st. We have the
Oh,
meeting
it's
minutes for the 21st for today, and
Okay, that's what I meant, 21st. Yeah, the one we have the meeting minutes for. Yeah.
Okay, so
Yes.
a vote to rescind the vote by the school committee to
Mhm.
charge for tuition for the months of April, May, and June. And to craft a letter to go to preschool parents indicating as such and including in there that if they would like to make a donation to the preschool, that they could do so.
I don't know. I don't know how many people will make a donation. I think that's part of concern with the people being upset about the half charge in the first place. Cindy, have you been getting a lot of emails? I know a few of them have been forwarded to us.
I received 3.
Okay.
3 emails. And I had been sending it out. You probably got it. Every Friday I do Friday update emails to all the parents in my building. And I had been putting in there saying, school committee is going to have a discussion. Thank you for asking, because some were asking in April, should we send in payment? And at that point, we were hoping to go back to school in May. So we just said, put it on hold, put it on hold. So I had been prepping them right along for, you know, to see what was going to happen, just to let them know there was a discussion. But as far as emails, I received 3.
Knowing
so
now that nobody else is charging, I really think that if we try to push this, it's gonna not
Right.
turn out well.
I don't want it to hurt next year. I really don't.
Yeah.
And it goes both ways. The school doesn't get this money now, that's gonna hurt next year.
Mhm.
If the school alienates families and they say, hey, this is what happened in the springtime, I'm not gonna bother to sign up again just in case, because I don't want to get caught in that position. That hurts us too.
Mhm.
But if they went to a private school, they didn't give a reimbursement at all. They didn't reduce the tuition. They paid full price.
Right.
so what if we took June off? We were only collecting 15% for June.
I don't think, honestly, I don't think that's going to make a difference. That's my own feeling. I guess we could look at it that this year it just affects those 3 months, and then, you know, the value of not affecting the entire school year next year.
All right.
So
So
I don't think it's worth like haggling here, like saying, okay, we're just gonna do 20% for March, April, May, and leave the 15 for June. Doesn't make a difference. The principle of it.
yeah, I think
Just to go back to them and with a change number is gonna, it's already June.
Yeah.
And it's also three people that really, I mean, maybe there was more that just didn't express it, but at the same time, I feel like we did a good faith effort in reducing it. You know, I mean, we could have just left it as it was, which again, I wouldn't have agreed with, but I don't know. I mean, nobody likes the situation that we're in. We're all in very difficult situations.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't want to make it worse for next year.
Mm-hmm. And again,
It's already bad enough.
oh, I'm sorry. If area towns also aren't charging, I mean, again, we don't have the time to come with a whole full and get all the information about every other town around us, what they did and didn't do comparatively and all that. You know,
and they're in different financial situations too. I mean, they have different things going on than we do also.
Well, they also are better off financially.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so, but I don't know that is going to sway anyone.
so given the language that Kevin came up with, which is we're gonna rescind the vote in the light of the fact that none of the surrounding districts are charging, in the hopes of goodwill for next year and being very explicit with what we expect next year. Can I so move that?
So you're moving, the
I'm
language
moving,
that
I'm
Kevin
moving
put
the
forward.
language that Kevin proposed,
Rescind the
which I
vote
can't repeat right now.
of the to rescind the vote of the school committee from May 21st to charge for preschool tuitions during the months of April, May, and June at a modified rate.
So moved.
Motion made by Kelly,
I'll second.
second by Becky. Any further discussion?
I just want to know who's drafting the letter.
Have to come from us, from Cindy, or from
Okay.
combination of
The
Cindy.
three of us will work on that,
Yep.
you know.
Okay.
And where is the money coming from to pay for this?
To pay
Mean
for
by the
what?
money.
To pay for the tuition?
To pay for the 48,000 that we're losing.
Our
Oh,
revolving.
no. I mean, whatever we end up with for a balance, I have already made some adjustments because of what had already happened with regard to our FY20 budget in 21. Like I said before, when I did the general fund report, you know, we're going to have to wait till we get closer to the end of the year, and I am moving things around. And in the end, for FY20, I'll set us up as best I can with the revolving funds, both the preschool and the school lunch account. In FY21, I've already moved the 0.5 a 2.5 teacher salary into the general fund. I've already accounted.
So is this gonna
Okay.
gonna impact other grades, like teacher wise and the negotiations and stuff like that by doing this
I don't think so.
financially?
No.
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 Okay,
It's more about sustainability. Like I said in the beginning, it's, you know, we can get by FY20. We can get through FY20, but going forward, if this happens again next year, and we don't know for how long that may happen, you know, there's sustainability of the program. We will not be able to sustain it. We can't shove this whole program into the general fund in lieu of fees, because it's absolutely, we have enough problems now with the general fund. You know, trying to maintain what we have and the staff that we have. So we will do that, and survey is a great idea. We'll send out the letter, and we'll go from there.
roll call vote.
Becky Charniak, aye.
Kelly Grady, aye.
Julie Mulder, no.
Heather Moore and I.
Lisa Brown, aye. Okay, moving on. Back to Kevin.
Okay, so we put on here for some more lighthearted entertainment. Let's talk about
Why we moved on.
I killed my video because I'm freezing like crazy. So if I can get rid of the video, I think I can still be heard without freezing up. So the plan here is to talk a little bit about where we are in the budgetary process, which is, like everything else, way out of normal routine that we would anticipate. But just a reminder to go back to February and early March, when we had an initial proposed budget of $14,693,039. In order to get down to a 1% budget, we had to get down to the total of $13,725,870, which is basically a reduction of $967,000. And we began that process in earnest back in March by eliminating some of the programs that we had talked about for positions. We had talked about a STEM program that would go between the middle school and the elementary school and the primary school. That position has been eliminated. We had talked about adding a special education teacher so that they would be full team teaching next year at the middle school. That position was cut. We had talked about adding animal and plant science, or a science teacher at the high school. That position was cut. We were talking about a custodian, to bring back a custodian that we had cut previously. That position was cut. Then we went back in, and every administrator went through their lines, and we went through probably 3 or 4 iterations of looking at our budgets, what we can and what we can't do, because after making all those cuts, we were still not where we needed to be. So we looked at instructional supplies, office supplies, ancillary materials, all of those things that we made reductions to. We reviewed the entirety of our support staff in special education. We made some adjustments there. Some of these reductions that we were able to make were through attrition. By that, I mean people who had indicated to us that they were not coming back or had resigned during the school year. There were some positions that we were able to reduce and not bring back in for next year. So we saved some funding there. And that got us to a shortfall of $213,237. With the CARES Act money, which is $94,616, we are at this point at a shortfall at a 1% budget of $118,621. Now, to get to that total, we look at the very real possibility of reducing by a 1.5 FTEs in the DTA positions. The possibility of we'll have to reduce by 1.0 in the support staff positions. And we will also need to continue to make some additional small reductions in supply lines, textbook lines, in other ways to get us down to that number that would equal the 1%. For information's sake, I did speak with Mr. Wojcik. I want to put my video back on just in case, but I freeze up, I'm going to apologize. I did talk to Mr. Wojcik yesterday. We had some discussion in our budget subcommittees. We think that there might be some more pain to be felt in budget going forward. I did speak with Mr. Wojcik, and his advice to me yesterday was to work on getting to the 1% budget for right now. And to do that, I just spelled out what we would have to do in order to get to that 1% budget. Now, to get to a 0% budget, the total reduction from the original, the total reduction would be $254,521. So that's an extra $135,900 that we would need to also make. So now you've got three options. You can make all the cuts I just talked about and cut 3 more teaching positions. You could make all the cuts I just talked about and make cuts to the athletics and extracurricular activities as we did in whatever.
Oh, Kevin, we can't hear you.
Probably just as well. We don't want to hear about cuts.
Kevin, we can't hear you.
Did I freeze up? Or can
Yeah.
you hear me?
Yeah.
Gotta go back about a minute.
Okay, so that's why I can't put the video on. I'm sorry. So to get down to a 0% budget, we would have to cut another $135,900. I said that there were 3 ways of doing that. We could cut 3.0 FTE teaching positions above and beyond everything I already talked about. We could make cuts to the high school, middle school athletic programs, extracurricular programs, or we could do a combination of the 2 that would get us to that point. So that's not a very pretty one, but that would get us down to the 0% appropriation. So right now, as I said, I talked to the town administrator. His recommendation was for us to get to the point where we are at the 1% appropriation. And as I explained there, we believe that we can do that in the ways that I just explained. If we have to get to 0, more of a doomsday plan, we have a plan in place. We would have to do one of the following 3 options that I just mentioned and get down to the 0% appropriation if we have to. So
When does this have to be decided?
well, so there's no town meeting until September, so there's no definitive number until September. I do need to, it is responsible of us to let anybody that we think we may need to reduce from the DTA's staff by June 15th, which is part of that memorandum that I'm going to go over later on. They agreed to extend it to the 15th. But ideally, if we're going to make any cuts to get down to the 1% within the DTA staff, we would have to let those letters get out by June 15th, which I think we have to do because we know we're not going to get above 1%. So we'll take care of that piece first off.
So, and then going forward with the potential of having a new superintendent, I'd be curious to see if he has any, because we have time, I guess, but not really, to see if he has any other thoughts and ideas how to reduce cutting people. But I mean, that's probably not going to happen until like July.
Right.
And they're saying we have to have this done by June 15th.
Right, so he would not be able to make those decisions for you. You'd have to wait until after July. When it gets to the 0%, if you have to get under the 0% appropriation, that would fall on his watch.
Right.
Right. So for now, we can just focus on the 1% and not
That
the
was
0%.
the advice from the town administrator,
Yeah.
yes, yesterday. So
Kevin,
I
will you
believe we can
correct-
get there.
So Kevin, are we needing to decide now or prior to June 15th whether or not we're cutting 3 teachers?
So we wouldn't cut 3 teachers by June 15th. We would, if we've already, those positions that we originally cut were not in the budget. So
Right.
We're not staff members right now. If we're going to make any additional cuts, which I believe would be somewhere in the area of probably 1.5 within the DTA, we would need to make that decision by June 15th. At this point, Becky, I think we just have to make those cuts, and it'll be up to us to decide where it's best to make that cut. But that's going to happen by June 15th to get to the 1% appropriation.
Are you just filling us in, or do we have to make a decision about any of that based on as the school committee?
Right. So, I mean, technically, you could say yay or nay, but I mean, I think in the past we've always made the decisions as to where those cuts are going to come from. We have to reduce by $118,000, and it is our expectation that we would have to do it through those 3 different sources, whether it be supply lines and sundries, as well as some teaching positions, that 1.5 teaching position to get us to that point. As for right now, I don't know definitively. We talked this morning. We talked about a number of options, but we really need to figure out where that one position is going to have the least impact,
Right.
the least impactful.
Yeah. All right. Thank you.
So for now, just I'm understanding this just by listening. I do better with papers in front of me, but that's not the world we're in anymore. So now we're doing this on the 1%. The
Yes.
idea that if we had to get to 0%, that would come later in the year,
Right.
towards the September. If we get to September and get the meeting, Heather's shaking her head.
You're gonna know your sheet, your cherry sheet, so that'll kind of give you some background of what you're gonna
July.
expect for July. July will be your kind of once
Okay.
the state releases their budget, that's gonna tell you, because that's how the town gets their budget from, and that's how they appropriate the funds over to the school committee.
So we would know before the start of school. Not definitively maybe, but we would have an idea if we were going to have to do that additional layer of cuts.
Which means we'd be in big trouble if we're at 0, because
Yes.
we're after June 15th.
So I had that conversation, and like Heather said, I believe that in July or by early August, I got a sense that we're going to know, get down to 0% at that point. And I did speak about that with the town administrator, because obviously we would want to make those decisions in advance, because those decisions could have impact the building's academic schedule, because now you have to replace teachers and get coverages and supervisions and so on and so forth. So my hope would be that by early August, we have a pretty good idea that it's going to be 0, and we would have to move in that direction to make those cuts at that point.
Any thoughts? Anyone else?
Well, I think as far as the 0%, I believe, and I think Kevin did indicate that we definitely want to have a plan, to be working on it now, rather than waiting, because then it just gets to be too late, too much towards the start of the school year, particularly if we need to be canceling, entire programs and things of that nature. So, and that would be brought to the school committee, of course, for a vote when we get an actual number. But just to really have that out there, as Mr. Maines just indicated, the possibilities with that 0%.
I think this is really where we need to know what the preschool parents want to do, because it has a ripple effect. The ripple effect will be next year, where do we just do a pregnant pause and not do the preschool program at all? Again, these are not easy cuts, regardless of what we do. This is not easy at all.
Right. And that's sort of why I brought up when we were talking about pre-K, that the real possibility of just not offering it, because you're going to be cutting elsewhere with the possibility of not getting the funding that you're looking for next year for preschool. It will have a trickle-down effect.
And just as a reminder, when Kevin delineated the figures, the additional amounts we need to cut for the 1% or the 0%, that's after doing many, many, many reductions, throughout the budget that we did present back in, I think it was February 5th.
Yeah. So, I mean, close to $1 million when all is said and done.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Anyone else? You don't need anything from us, Kevin?
No, so just so that everybody knows that what we're going to do is make the final decision, determinations as to where to make those positional cuts and any additional cuts that need to take place ASAP, so that we can get the materials up. But we will be at the 1%. And Courtney, I think you might have the numbers in front of you. I'd have to dig for my number, but with that 1% appropriation is that dollar amount.
Yep. That would be $13,725,870 at 1% increase. Mm-hmm.
Right. We will get to that number, so that we can notify anybody who is going to receive a non-renew or a reduction in force on June 15th.
Okay. Thank you.
You.
Moving on, we'll move on to the school committee and subcommittee report and accounts payable, which I think we split, Becky. Do you have your half? I have them both if you don't.
I don't have mine up, if you don't mind.
On May 21st, 2020, I signed 4 batches totaling $64,429.47. And on May 28th, 2020, Becky signed 5 batches totaling $14,816.67. There was nothing unusual in mine.
No, mine either.
We're moving on to the consent agenda. So, the meeting minutes for May 21st, 2020. Anybody saw anything that needs changing?
I don't see anything, but Courtney usually has better eyes than I do.
Not necessarily today, though. No, I don't see anything either.
Yeah.
If nothing, I'll be looking for a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the school committee meeting minutes of May 21st, 2020.
Motion by Kelly.
Yeah.
Second by Becky. Roll call vote.
Becky Charniak, aye.
Kelly Grady, aye.
The more and I.
Julie Mulder, aye.
Lisa Brown, aye. Thank you. Now we'll move on to the FY 2020 Telstone and Son in-district transportation contract.
Yes, as I had reported out several times, actually. Again, the way this has been with the whole coronavirus thing. The last time that I spoke with you about this, I believe it was at that May 21st meeting, in fact, was that we were waiting for some legislation to be passed with regard to Mass General Law, Chapter 41, Section 56. And that is in regards to that a town accountant is not allowed legally to pay any bills unless goods have been received and services have been rendered. But then coronavirus came along. So just to reiterate, DESE got all school districts throughout the entire state together. They had spoken with the Department of Revenue. The Department of Revenue knew that it was going to take a little bit of time to work on some amendments to that legislation only for this particular situation. And the underlying, what precipitated this was for school bus transportation, actually nationwide, there was an issue of the possibility of not having continuity of services when we went forward. If they weren't paid something at least for the time since school stopped this year. So the Associate Commissioner of DESE had all of us get together by vendors. So if only three school districts have Telstone, it's Douglas Public Schools, Menon Upton Regional School District, and Blackstone Millville Regional School District. So we worked on a memorandum of agreement, and that was done throughout the entire state with all vendors. And I believe that we came up with something very, very good, the way it ended up, frankly, and not only for FY20, but FY21 as well, which I don't know of any districts that did that. There may be some, but none that I'm aware of. So the way that it ended up is to pay 68% of the full value of transportation services beginning after May 16th. Now, Telstone has been paid in full through, did I say May? I meant March 16th. They have been paid in full through March 15th. We only paid half of the March transportation bill. You can tell I got a lot of different things going on in my brain. They haven't been paid anything since March 15th. So it's to pay 68% of the full value for the second half of March and for April, May, and June. And also to have FY21 remain at the FY20 level. So this particular agreement is with regards to Douglas Public Schools is saving $108,057.60 in FY20 and mitigates the FY21 budget for the amount of $63,000 with a total savings for both fiscal years of $171,057.60. So statewide, they realized that it would be extremely problematic for school districts if suddenly, bus companies went out of business because they weren't being paid anything for those months. So the legislation did pass the House, as I indicated some time ago. It appears that they did pass it. The Senate passed it on June 1st. They did make a few amendments. We have incorporated the language in that Senate number 2733 in this memorandum of agreement, and you'll see that on page 2. So we crossed off the language that was previously there because we had started this long before, this bill was even introduced. And I sent it to Greg Pagnini, our attorney, and he added in the bullets, the 2 bullets right after the crossed out section. And those are the only changes that were made. So it incorporates the exact language from the bill. So it has to be voted on by the school committee, and then it goes to the Board of Selectmen as well. And I think it's not going to be on their next Board of Selectmen's meeting on the 9th. I believe it's the 16th. They'll be taking it up for action as well. And this was sent to the town, and Rich Bowen, also the town attorneys, reviewed it as well.
Great.
We finally got to a place where we could proceed with this. So I'm very happy to get this completed. So I didn't know if anyone had any questions with regard to the process or anything else.
Do you have the language for the vote?
Oh, I can just provide it to you. Yeah, I'm sorry.
That's
We were
okay.
just finishing this up today. Okay, so if you want to move to approve the memorandum of agreement between Telstone and Sons and Douglas Public School District. It was actually dated May 8th, 2020. But you know what? I am going to change that date on there. So why don't we say dated June 4th, 2020. regarding an adjustment to transportation contractual amounts for the second half of March and for April, May, and June of fiscal year 2020.
Anyone?
Should that include something about 2021?
Yes. Thank you. In FY 2021.
Okay. So moved.
Thank you.
Motion made by Kelly,
Second.
second by Heather. Any further discussion? Roll call vote.
Becky Charniak, aye.
Kelly Grady, aye.
Heather Moore and I.
Don't see. Julie, you're muted.
Oh, she's muted. Okay.
Am I still muted?
There you are.
Oh, there you are.
Sorry, I lost my video feed. Julie Mulgary, sorry.
Lisa Brown, aye. Thank you. Thank you, Courtney.
Thank you very much. Well, Jean and I will be very happy to get this finally paid after it goes to the Board of Selectmen.
And if I could acknowledge Courtney's persistence and dedication to this process, she's been going through the ringer to try to get it all taken care of, but she's did a great job.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to the 2020-2021 student handbook revisions.
I don't, Mrs. Socher, is she still in the,
Yep.
Okay, you're first.
I'm here. All right, so the first section is an addition to the handbook. It's something that I think we all will have in ours, and it has to do with delayed openings and breakfast or lunch or early release days, and it's really spelling out what does that mean. So in my building, does that mean preschool is canceled for the day, and so on. So we didn't have anything this detailed before in any of our handbooks. And then the other changes, because I have a new school nurse, she just went in and pretty much tweaked the language. She made it more specific. We highlighted what she had changed, and there's nothing really major. She didn't really add too much other than really making it clear on the expectations. You have any questions?
Yeah, I just saw what I'm confident is a typo on the top
Okay.
page 2. First bullet point, no schools will serve lunches on early release days. Please not this.
Yeah, no. Yep, thank you.
And then maybe this is just the way that you want to phrase it. The second bullet point on the very first page, the last phrase there, while in a delayed opening, as there will be no supervisions available at our school. I thought you meant supervision or supervisors, but not supervisions.
Yep.
And that same phrasing is at least in the Douglas Elementary School handbook too, because I'm guessing
Right.
copy pasted.
We all pretty much took the
Fair
same
enough.
document.
You need
Yeah.
to type that up 5 times.
That's fine. We'll fix that. Something else that I noticed too after I sent this out, of course, when it says 1 hour delay, for example, 7:20 to 8:20, I think I'll put in our actual time.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
And the delay. So I'll make that change.
I also, for preschool, if we still, God willing, AM and PM would be helpful, because every parent sends this text chain when there's a delay and there's still, for the full day students, what time do I drop them off if I still drop off in the afternoon?
So
I would
clarify the full day. It's in here about AM and PM, but not full.
Right, because the full day people are used to dropping off in the morning, so then they're like, oh,
Sure.
you know,
Okay, I will add that in. Thank you.
that's all my thoughts.
Anything else? All right, I'll turn it over to John.
Mine are pretty simple. I have that same information that Cindy had about early release days, and I will fix those typos. My second thing really is just to clear up some things. Since I've been there for 2 years working with Mr. A through several different discipline things that have come up, And we found that our handbook was not as clear as it probably should be with when this happens, what types of discipline will we have. And so we really, the middle school went through this a couple of years ago. We took what the middle school had and tailored it for elementary school, and have just updated that. We'll just add that chart in there with the information that we already have with our code of conduct, just to give some clarification on those types of things.
Great.
Any questions? Then Mr. Delaney's up.
Nothing, no big changes. We made a lot of big changes, again, as Mr. Bell indicated, a couple of years ago, and then also last year we had a lot. So the only big differences are a lot of to be determineds. So, but nothing in terms of policies.
Okay.
And I have the high school handbook and the athletic handbook. Only a few changes for the high school. We updated our core values. We went through that process with our NIASC review. So that's in there. We changed the rule for when a student fails due to absences, when they get that academic failure. The old rule was that they had to have 0 unexcused absences the following term, and then they could get their actual earned grade back. We changed that to no more than 1, just on the idea that it's a steep curve for somebody to go from 7 unexcused absences to 0. So just in hopes that we could help with that process. We had the same early release language as the other schools, and just a few other things that are really kind of high schoolish. We are not allowing students to use food delivery services like DoorDash and Grubhub. It started, but Desi wanted to put an end to it before it really started. And then just a few other changes that have happened to just minor things, like the guidance department became the school counseling department. We now allow backpacks. And then our new extracurricular opportunities that include dues, things like DECA, and then the list of clubs, and just new times for athletic regulations. Because we have a slight change to the bell schedule, we had to make some changes to when a student is considered not able to participate in a game if they come to school late.
Can I ask a strange question?
Of course.
Is there going to be anything put into the handbook? Because I know this year, I don't think any Alice things were done, and normally they're supposed to be done yearly, and that's kind of concerning, actually. That's for another topic. Is that going to be put into the handbook? Or no?
I think the Alice procedures themselves are already in there. As far as like the schedule of the drills, it could be. I think I'd like to keep that kind of flexible, though, because we try to plan it around making a kind of a minor disruption to the school day. So, but we'll make sure that we include it in the school calendar for next year for sure. Maybe just not publicize it, but just keep it in the school calendar. Our goal is to have one done by October. Any other questions on the student handbook?
I was a little curious about boys volleyball in the spring. Did we just like fingers crossed that's going to work out this year, or?
Well, just
I'm sorry, Josh, go ahead.
I think to some extent it kind of depends on the money. You know, we're looking at a pretty steep climb to add any new extracurriculars. In fact, kind of looking at a steep climb to keep some of the ones that we already have. So, yeah, our intent is to still to keep it at least as an intramural type of thing. Maybe not something that's going to compete for MIA tournament spots, but to at least do it as an intramural. And what's the actual term for it, Kevin? When it's
Intramural works. Yep.
Yep, or a club team. So yeah, we would like to still see that.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. In fact, that kind of transitions over to the athletic handbook, where we revised the athletic handbook, which really hadn't been adjusted since Mr. Maines wrote it initially. So we expanded it first to include high school and middle schools, trying to get our athletic programs to be more continuous between the middle school and the high school. So it does cover both buildings now. We added sports that are missing from previous drafts, like the girls ice hockey co-op, the swim co-op, and boys volleyball, because we do still intend to try to run that program, the field hockey co-op as well. There were a lot of policies that were updated because MIA policies were updated, specifically the bona fide team member rule, which is basically, you know, if a student plays on the school team and on an outside of school team, if there's a conflict, they're supposed to go with the school team. The MIA kind of changed that rule so it's no longer an absolute. During preseason and the regular season, they can participate in their outside of school team instead of the school team. If it's postseason play, then they have to, or tournament play, they do have to participate in the school team. There were some changes to medical exams, like the concussion rule basically was not in there, the concussion screening. That was added. And then there were changes to the chemical health violation language that were also put in there. Basically, the old rule was there was a guilt by association clause where if a student was at a party where there was alcohol, drugs, or whatever, they didn't have to actually be using them themselves. If they were at the party, they were considered in violation of the policy. That's no longer the case. You know, if there's two kids drinking at a party that the kids are at, that an athlete's at, and they don't partake, they are not guilty of violating that policy. And then there were a couple of just Douglas things: attendance at school, but the time basically that students have to be at school to participate in a game. That's an unexcused absence. If they're excused, they had a doctor's appointment, whatever, then they're totally fine. And then also we have a 24-hour cool-off policy where we ask parents that if they're upset at a decision a coach makes during the game, that they wait 24 hours before they approach the coach about it. Not much good happens in the heat of the moment. So it's kind of a good life policy, I guess. So those are the primary changes to the high school and middle school athletic handbook.
So Josh, can I just jump in? Brian, you're basically adhering to the exact, that same handbook, Brian?
Yes.
For athletics? Okay.
Anybody have any questions?
I think you would need 2 votes, Lisa. One for the student handbooks and then one for the
Athletics?
guidebooks.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I lost my other laptop and I had to come upstairs. So does anybody have the language? Kelly, you want to take a stab at it?
I'll do my best.
Okay.
Except I just minimized. Hang on. So I'll make a motion to accept the 2020-2021 student handbook revisions for the primary, elementary, middle, and high schools.
Motion made by Kelly,
Second.
second by Becky. Any further discussion? Roll call vote.
Becky Charniak, aye.
Kelly Grady, aye.
Julie Mulder, aye.
Heather Moore and I.
Lisa Brown, aye. Thank you. And the same for athletics.
So I'll make a motion to accept the 2020-2021 athletic handbook revisions for the high school and middle school.
Motion made by Kelly,
Second.
second by Becky. Any further discussion? Roll call vote.
Becky Charniak, aye.
Kelly Grady, aye.
Julie Mulder, aye.
Heather Moore and I.
Lisa Brown, aye. Thank you. Thankfully, I didn't trip coming up the stairs with my laptop. Okay. On to the memorandum of agreement between the Douglas Teachers Association and the Douglas School Committee.
Okay, I'll jump on top of this issue real quickly. This has been similar to what Courtney had went through with the bus thing. So we started this back in April. You know, it's hard to go back and forth with memorandums and making changes and so forth because it's all being done by Google and then it has to get sent out to the lawyers and then they make the adjustments. So it's been a long process, and I was actually on the phone with Kevin Reardon, the president of the DTA, this afternoon, probably around 3 o'clock, and confirmed the final pieces to it, so that they're taking a vote on it tomorrow. So the memorandum of agreement that I sent to you very late today, and which obviously would not have had the time to give proper consideration to, and you certainly can, but it basically just talks about what remote learning is going to mean between the school district and the Teachers Association. So it spells out expectations. It talks about things such as leave benefits, extended leave benefit. So it talks about.
Is that Kevin this time?
I think we lost Kevin.
I think, Kevin, we lost you.
Oh, no.
Again?
Yep.
Hello?
You've been out for a little bit, yeah, for several minutes.
Oh my God.
Actually, since
Okay.
right after the beginning.
Oh,
So if you read all 5 pages, you gotta start over. Uh-oh.
I apologize. I don't know. Living out in the woods, I guess.
Yes.
So this agreement is between us and the DTA. We started it back in April. We finally, today at about 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock, I don't remember what time it was, Kevin and I finally finished it up. I sent it to Greg Pagnini again for one final look. He's sent it to their representative for one final look. They're voting on it tomorrow. And basically what it does is it spells out the expectations for both parties during the remote learning process of the school closure. It talks about leave benefits. It talks about extended leave benefits. It talks about the type of work that we're expecting the teachers to do. It talks about the students' expectations. It talks about credit, no credit. It also talked about the changes to the spring sport salary structure that we talked about. It changes the non-renewal deadline from June 1st to June 15th. It talks about confidentiality in FERPA. It talks about mandated reporters. It talks about communications. It talks about evaluations, and it talks about non-PTS teachers and how they move from step 1 to step 2 to 3, and then 3 to professional teacher status, and that evaluations will be based on formative or last year's evaluation, only because they can't submit their work. We can't continue to do observations. So we've entered into an agreement that everyone will be held harmless, but the DESC does require that we do evaluate them, so we can evaluate them up to what they had achieved up until March for the most part, and that's what we'll be submitting. If they were not on the 1 year cycle, they were on the 2 year cycle, we will submit what we submitted last year for them. So it just basically is the agreement that we were hoping to get in place a long time ago. Most districts have done it. Some districts have gone without it. We just think it makes sense. It will serve as a good template should we run into this situation again for next year. It is only for this year. It ends on June 16th, basically. All of these things that are in here have been adhered to. There has been nothing that is in question in any of it. So, but it does document it and does put it in place, and they will be voting on it tomorrow. And
Oh, no.
Oh, no.
We can't hear you.
am I back?
Yep.
Now you're back.
Maybe you need to change rooms.
I'm on my 3rd computer. I don't have any more computers, so
No, I mean rooms, maybe.
yeah, I know. Well, if I go downstairs, my daughters are here with their dogs and they bark, and I didn't want to be embarrassed.
Well, I know you love dogs.
So basically, the long and short of it, everybody, is that it just documents everything that has transpired so far from the beginning of March, from March 16th, whenever we started this, to right now. There's nothing in here that has not been adhered to all the way through. And again, I apologize for the duration, but this is what happens when you have to continue to make edits, electronically.
And we need to vote on this?
I think if we wait, the problem with waiting is that now it's after the fact. June school will be done. So
Okay. So I'll make a motion to accept the memorandum of agreement between the Douglas School District Teachers Association and the Douglas School District School Committee, June 4th, 2020.
Thank you.
Motion made by Kelly,
Second.
second by Becky. Any further discussion? Roll call vote.
Becky Charniak, aye.
Kelly Grady, aye.
Julie
Heather
Mulder,
Moore.
aye.
Heather Moore and I.
Lisa Brown, aye.
Thank you all. And again,
Thank you.
I did send it out to you, so if there are any questions, please let me know. But as I said, the DTA, they're going to vote tomorrow. Kevin and I have hammered away at this. I think we're in a good place, and I will let you know for sure tomorrow.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, we're moving on to the school business and operations manager's report.
Okay, I just have a 4-hour, no.
I'm gonna kill my video.
No, this evening I have for you the FY 2021 budgetary transfers, FY 2020. I was working on 21 all day. FY 2020 budgetary transfers number 6. These are just transfers that have been requested by administrators. Does anyone have any questions?
Be looking for a motion.
I move
I
to
make a motion to accept the Douglas Public Schools FY 2020
Yeah.
budgetary transfers number 6, school committee meeting June 4th, 2020.
Motion made by Kelly,
second.
second by Becky. Any further discussion? Roll call vote.
Becky Charniak, aye.
Kelly Grady, aye.
Julie Mulder, aye.
Heather Moore and I.
Lisa Brown, aye. And that's it? All set,
Yes.
Courtney?
Yep, thank you very much. It actually would have been nice if we could have transferred some funds into FY 21. I think that was a Freudian slip. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Moving on, topics not anticipated. Anyone? Well, there's no need for executive session tonight, so I'll be looking for a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn at 8:45.
Motion made by Kelly,
Second.
second by Becky. Roll call vote.
Becky Charniak, aye.
Kelly Grady, aye.
Julie Mulder, aye.
Heather Moore and I.
Lisa Brown, aye. And thank you, everyone.
Okay, thank you.
Again,
Next
my
meeting.
apologies.
No worries. Me too. And the next meeting, I believe, Kelly, you saw that somewhere because it's not on my paper.
It's on the bottom of the agenda.
June
June
18th, I believe.
Bottom of
17th,
mine's
18th.
cut off by accident.
It's a Wednesday this time, right? It's the Wednesday.
Okay.
I-
And that's scheduled for Zoom?
Oh,
No, I got to
Yes.
tell you, because I had it as being on Wednesday the 17th, but on the agenda it says it's the
It says-
18th.
yeah, it's the
June
18th,
18th,
as far as
it says.
I know.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we're going with the 18th? Is that correct? Just
I'll try and verify that in the next 24 hours and let you know because my internet is saying
No,
it's
no.
unstable again.
all
We
right.
may-
Thank you, Lisa.
Lisa, we may have another one before then if we need to vote on the.
Yes, we may.
So that was what I was wondering, is that something that might be done because the 18th is the last of the meetings, and I wasn't sure where you were at with that.
I hope so.
Okay. That'll be my last meeting as well.
Shouldn't have said that.
Not ready to hear that.
Okay. All right. Good night, everybody.
Okay, good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.